it going? And welcome back to another episode of Mood for Feud. I'm your host Katy, and today I am in the mood for Taylor Swift feuds, specifically her feuds with the pop girlies. And in this week's episode, we are going to be taking a look at Taylor Swift and Charli XCX's very messy, very public, very hyped up feud that took place earlier this year. And this is a part 2 episode, so if you haven't done so already, make sure you check out last week's episode where we took a look at Taylor Swift's feuds with Katy Perry and Olivia Rodrigo. This is also going to be the very last episode of 2025, which is so crazy to say, but I will be back in 2026. I'm just going to take a little summer holiday break while I'm in Aotearoa visiting my family and have some time off, put my feet up, relax a little bit, unplug a little bit. I am going to try and be a little bit more active on Instagram, maybe, so we can keep in touch there. Make sure you're following. My plan is to bring the show back the second week of January in 2026. So we will be back, don't you worry. But in the meantime, I hope everybody has a very safe, relaxing holiday season. I hope that you look after yourselves, look after one another. I know it's a crazy stressful time. There's a bunch of family dynamics to navigate. There's always seems to be some kind of something popping up. So stay healthy, stay well, stay safe, and let's get into this week's episode. So Charli XCX, this is such an interesting feud to look into because it really seemingly came out of nowhere. I mean, I guess things had kind of been rumbling in the background in 2023, but nothing really that dramatic happened. And then suddenly in 2024, Charli released Brat. We got the song Sympathy as a Knife. And then 1 year after that, we got Taylor Swift's The Life of a Showgirl and her kind of, I guess, what's been viewed as her response to Sympathy as a Knife, which is her song Actually Romantic. So again, we've got a lot of song lyrics to break down. Let's get into it. So Charli and Taylor actually meet for the first time at the 2014 Jingle Ball in New York. This is a charity event where a bunch of artists perform to raise money, and Taylor performed her song Blank Space and Charli performed Boom Clap. And 2014 really was a big year for Charli XCX. It was what I would consider to be her breakout year. She featured on the song Fancy with Iggy Azalea, which was a massive hit. She also, of course, released the song Boom Clap, which was the first single from The Fault in Our Stars soundtrack, very 2014. But you know, that movie, based on the very popular John Green book, was definitely the moment. So to have your song be the first single of the soundtrack album, that's going to be making waves. So I feel like Charli XCX was really entering the mainstream pop culture zeitgeist in 2014. It's so interesting to look back at videos of Charli from this time because I kind of tend to forget that she had a whole different aesthetic pre-Brat. I feel like I've really brainwashed myself, cleared all my former memories of Charli XCX, and I truly, if you ask me to picture her, I'm picturing her in her little rave outfit with her little rave sunnies. I've tried to emulate a similar aesthetic today. I don't think I'm giving Brat at all, but anyway, I tried the big, long, dark, curly hair, the slutty little handbag, the knee-high boots, the whole thing. That is what I picture. And I kind of forget that Boom Clap was a totally different aesthetic. And I do kind of get now, in hindsight, why people around this time in 2014 would confuse her with Lorde. Because I remember hearing this and being like, what is going on? Mind you, 2014, I was a massive, massive Lorde fan. Still am, but that was really when I was in my pure heroine era. And to me, her and Charli just looked nothing alike. And I mean, I guess they still don't really look that alike, but they did definitely both have the big curly dark hair swooped to the side with a contrasting lipstick. So I can kind of maybe see a little bit where people were coming from. So Charli is really coming into the world, reaching new levels of fame and success in 2014. And Taylor, as we know, around the same time is entering her 1989 era, saying goodbye to country, embracing her genre shift to pop, releasing Bad Blood, feuding with Katy Perry, getting a little bit petty. So definitely out of the two, when they first meet, Taylor is by far the more seasoned, well-known artist, and Charli is definitely newer to the pop scene for sure. And as seems to be the pattern with all three feuds that we have talked about, things start off fairly well. You know, they are on good terms. Taylor is very supportive of Charli again. I don't think it's quite the same level of friendship as she had with Katy Perry. You know, like her and Katy were constantly talking about one another on Twitter in a supportive way, wishing each other happy birthday, attending each other's birthday parties, etc. I don't think Charli and Taylor were necessarily hanging out to that same degree, but Taylor very openly expressed that she was a fan of Charli's. And in 2015, Charli did a cover of Shake It Off on BBC Radio. And later that year, Taylor invited Charli as a surprise guest while she was on her 1989 world tour. And they performed Boom Clap together in Toronto. Now, the craziest thing is, guess what day these two performed together for the first time? It was, of course, October 3rd, International Mean Girls Day. This is so just one of those like weird, wacky, foreshadowy coincidences. But you know, the Mean Girls movie references in Taylor's life are ever present. That's all I'll say. So they perform Boom Clap together on October 3rd. And again, you know, Taylor expresses to her fans how much she loves Charli's music, how much she's excited to see her. I'll play the clip.
That anyone that you see on this stage tonight, or any night on the 1989 World Tour, any artist that comes out to perform for you is someone that I love. In my opinion, I'm about to bring out one of the greatest songwriters that we have going for us right now. She's unbelievable. She's about to perform her #1 smash, Boom Clap. Charli XCX is here in Toronto.
In 2018, Taylor asks Charli and Camila Cabello to accompany her on the Reputation Stadium tour as opening acts. So Charli is touring with Taylor from May 2018 all the way to November 2018. I think they perform in something crazy like over 50 stadiums together. So that's a long time to be spending on the road together, traveling, like you're going to get to know the person. I think it's interesting to note that, again, I didn't necessarily see this intense friendship between them, but professionally they did at least have a very good working relationship. But I think if I compare this dynamic to Sabrina Carpenter and Taylor Swift, for example, to me this very much reads as a professional working relationship. But that's not to say they're not getting along. And I think being an artist in Taylor's position at the time, you're not going to choose someone to open for you if there's someone you don't get along with, right? So we can assume the relationship was positive. Charli seemed to have a good time on the tour. Her and Camila would come out and join Taylor to perform Shake It Off. And, you know, the vibes were good. I think Charli described it as being just a very like girly pop supportive space, and she was having fun. Now, the first time that things kind of get a little bit titchy between them is in August 2019 when Charli is interviewed by Pitchfork, and she is of course asked about her experience of touring with Taylor in the Reputation tour. And she gives a quote which comes across as kind of shady. I don't think it was intentionally shady at all. I think it was just maybe not the most well thought out quote. But she says to Pitchfork, "I'm really grateful that Taylor asked me on that tour, but as an artist, it kind of felt like I was getting up on stage and waving to 5-year-olds. And then she continues saying it made her realize that she doesn't actually want to be an opening act anymore. She said, quote, "I've done so much of it and it really cemented my status as this underdog character, but I need to just own my own fucking shit finally." Swifties felt a bit upset with this quote because they were like, wow, she seems really ungrateful. You know, why is she shading Taylor's fandom? Taylor can't help that she attracts a younger audience. Like, this was all the sentiments at the time. It was very like amped up, played up. I don't actually think Charli was being snarky. She was genuinely surprised at the difference because Charli made her roots in the rave scene. So her audience, her early fandom was really formed like in basements, at raves, in clubs, late night shows, you know, this kind of vibe, very like party girl scene, which makes sense for her music and her aesthetic, even back then, was, giving Boiler Room, if I'm being honest. So it isn't surprising that she would have felt like, oh wow, this is a really different and new experience for me, performing in the Reputation tour and looking out and seeing, some children or some 12s or like just a completely different crowd. And I think that's what she was getting at. And then she followed it up by saying that even though she's been an opening act for a long time, she's like prepared to take that next step and become a headliner, which is also not shady. Like, that is what she should be doing. That is what all pop artists are aspiring to do, right? Like, nobody enters the music industry saying, man, I can't wait to be an opening act. I want to just do that for the rest of my life. So I don't think it was actually that shady. I think the media definitely played it up. I think probably some people online got a bit more heated about it than they needed to. And I will say it wasn't the best crafted quote. Like, I think she could have worded it in a better way. But she did also start off by saying, I'm very grateful to Taylor, and kind of acknowledging that she's the smaller artist and that, Taylor gave her this platform and this opportunity to perform in the Reputation tour. Now, because this article was upsetting so many people online, Charli did take to Twitter to kind of clarify what she meant by the quote that she gave to Pitchfork. She releases a statement saying, hey, a few people on the internet have taken something I said out of context, and I want to clarify there is absolutely no shade and only love here. As I say in the article and have said many times before, I am extremely grateful to Taylor for inviting me to open for her. She's one of the biggest artists of my generation, and the Reputation tour was one of the biggest tours in history. In the printed version of this much wider conversation, my answers about this tour were boiled down into one kind of weird sentence. Leading up to that tour, I'd been playing a ton of 18 plus club shows, and so to be on stage in front of all ages was new to me and made me approach my performances with a whole new kind of energy. More so, I talked about how it was brilliant opening for Taylor. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity I was given and how much fun it was to perform to a new audience. Any tour I've been on with any other artist as an opening act has always taught me so much. It's always wonderful to watch other artists do their thing, own their stage, and speak their language to their dedicated fan bases. And this was especially true for the Reputation tour. Hope this gives clarity to what was a great interview. Lots of love. And I think that was nice. And it must be frustrating when you sit down for an interview and you give all of this kind of context and they pull out that one line where you said something which will obviously make, a bigger splash online, and then they focus the whole article around that. So, I think it is good that Charli clarified. Maybe it was a bit of an overreaction from everyone because, again, I don't think she actually said anything that bad. But that was sort of the first time where I guess things were a little bit awkward or a little bit tense between them. The following month, in September 2019, Charli is on Sunday Brunch, which is a UK talk show. And again, she brings up just how much she loves working with Taylor.
She's an incredible businesswoman and she's really kind. She makes us feel like so welcome. It feels like a girl gang on tour together. It's really good.
Now, the interesting thing to me is following the Reputation tour, the two really aren't seen together or linked together in any kind of way for a really long time. And this is why I keep sort of saying, to me, I think people will always say oh, Charli and Taylor used to be friends. I don't even think they were friends. I think they just had a good working relationship. And that's okay. You don't have to become besties with every single person you've ever worked with. And they clearly have a lot of respect for one another and admire each other's work. But yeah, it is odd to me when people are always they used to be friends because they spent over half a year together touring, and yet whenever once saw them invite one another to significant events or hang out or keep in touch after Reputation. So I think it was a working relationship, and I think that's okay. But yeah, following the tour anyway, they weren't really linked for a very long time until 2023. And this is where we really need to talk about the 1975, which is an English pop rock band. I'm sure everyone has heard, "Oh, I like girls like chocolate, and away we go, where nobody knew, they did me down by my patio." I'll admit, I have no idea what they're saying at any point in time, but that's okay. They make bangers. The lead singer for the 1975 Maddie Healy, he is definitely a controversial figure. Like, he says some pretty stupid shit, to be honest. He's made, racist comments and remarks. He's been misogynistic at times. If I'm being honest, like, Maddie Healy to me gives me the energy of like someone who's kind of edgy, maybe spent a little bit too much time on early Reddit or 4chan and thinks that dark humor is like really, really highbrow and kind of says controversial shit because he thinks it puts him above, quote unquote, basic people, or, like he's just so cool and edgy because he can handle the dark humor. And I guess the reason why I feel this way about Maddie Healy, or why I recognize this characteristic in him, is because I used to be like that too, okay? Like when I was 15, 16, I used to think that saying controversial stuff like made you more mature or made you more like thick-skinned, or I don't know, like more edgy, I guess. And then my brain developed and I stopped doing that. So I guess the like biggest difference between myself and Maddie Healy is that this man is doing all this and he's in his 30s, which frankly is embarrassing. And I wouldn't say he's necessarily like the worst person on earth, the most controversial, the most problematic. I think people do definitely hype up how much of a bad person he is. I think to me, he is more annoying, is like my biggest grievance with him. He's annoying. He thinks he has this like kind of I'm not like everybody else type of arrogance about him. I reckon he thinks he's like a much deeper thinker than he actually is. I reckon he thinks he's like so different and so alternative and just so not basic. But I think in reality, he's very easy to read. He's not a very complex person to me. He's just a guy who probably read some poetry once and thinks he's like more deep than he actually is. This is the energy I get from him. I'm not saying it's 100% true. This is just kind of like my vibe on him. Maddie Healy, he and Taylor Swift, back in 2014, they kind of had this little like rumored to be dating moment, this little flirty back and forth thing, which was definitely amped up by just teenagers online, but they for sure were playing into it. Maddie would wear like a 1989 shirt on stage during one of his concerts, and then Taylor would be out wearing a 1975 t-shirt. And so there was kind of always this speculation about whether or not they were dating or whether they had crushes on one another. And things were kind of amped up at one point because Maddie Healy gave an interview on the Shazam Top 20 show in Australia. And funnily enough, actually, during this interview, Charli XCX is in the studio because her interview with Shazam Top 20 was before Maddie's. So they have this little interaction together as well. But during his interview, Maddie brings up that he met Taylor backstage and that they actually exchanged numbers.
But it was nice. I met a lot of people. I met Taylor Swift, and that was really nice.
Now, Maddie, I reckon this is my hit prediction that Taylor Swift and you are going to be the next big thing. You're going to be an item. I'm calling it,
yeah,
bro.
well, you're calling that, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's just see what happens.
Well, because I say that because she favorited a near shirtless photo of you from the LA gig that night.
Oh, is that right?
Where are you?
Well, I'm backstage. I'm trying to stay away from all the kids. That's what my life's like. I've got to try and do an interview with you and try and stay away from all the kids. But yeah, no. I did she favourite a picture of me? Well, we exchanged numbers. Let's see what happens. What bloody hell are we gonna do? Go out with Taylor Swift? I mean, she's a sensation. Wouldn't say no.
Oh, mate, I'm in. Like, just want to say from a mate to a mate, that is a great choice, and I back it in, and I'm happy to be best man at the wedding.
Yeah, thanks.
And this thing, people took this little insert of them exchanging numbers and ran with it, and suddenly we had all these headlines of, oh my god, Maddie Healy and Taylor Swift are dating and blah 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 blah, and what will Harry Styles think, because she'd just been in her very fake PR relationship with him, and it was this whole big thing which was actually based on nothing. Then the following month, Taylor Swift attended the 1975 concert with Karlie Kloss. If you know, you know. Her and Karlie were allegedly kissing, making out in 4K, although more so in like 1080p because what iPhone were we using back then? The iPhone 4. Anyway, she attends the concert with Carly Kloss, and people are like, ooh, like is she here to see her crush Maddie? I don't know, because why was she locking lips allegedly with Carly the whole time? But anywho, it was like a fun little internet thing. In 2016, Maddie is quoted saying that he doesn't really understand why people are so fixated on this vibe between him and Taylor. And then he also gives a quote that, again, I don't think was bad intentioned, but certainly came across in a bad way. He says, quote, "I didn't make a big deal out of it myself. It's not really anything to talk about, because if she wasn't Taylor Swift, we wouldn't be talking about her. She wasn't a big impact on my life. It's just interesting to me how interested the world is about Taylor Swift. If I had gone out with Taylor Swift, I would have been fucking hell. I mean, I am not being Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Fuck that. That's also a man thing, a emasculating thing." So he kind of gave this quote that he doesn't want to date Taylor Swift because it would basically be a huge ego hit for his masculinity. I think what he was trying to say is it would be tricky to date someone who has so much fame, because even though the 1975 are a popular band, I mean, Taylor Swift was, on this steady uphill trajectory in her career, and at the time was for sure one of the biggest pop stars. I think he was just trying to say it would be tricky to date someone who is such a higher fame status than you yourself are, I think. But yeah, I mean, in the end, it just came off like he was some kind of weirdo who doesn't want to date a successful woman. So he also then had to take to Twitter to clarify that he is not a misogynist, and he says, quote, "I was being honest about all the thoughts, feelings, and situations that come along when people assume you are dating the most famous woman on the planet. I am telling you from experience, it's an all-consuming whirlwind and something that for me elicited a lot of self-exploration." And then he continued to praise Taylor and, said she's the most gracious, hardworking, creatively gifted, and beautiful woman that he had ever had the pleasure of meeting. Things are calm between them, but this is kind of like a bit of the Maddie Healy, Taylor Swift lore dump from 2014 and, this kind of like rumors that were surrounding them at the time. We get to 2019, Maddie Healy expresses interest to collaborate with Taylor on an acoustic album. Again, he gives a very flattering quote for her. He says, "I would never slag Taylor off. I think Taylor's amazing. Taylor, if you ever want someone to help you set up the mics for your acoustic record, just so you know, I'm there." They continued to be adjacent to one another. Obviously, they have a lot of mutual friends in the industry. Now, meanwhile, in 2021, Charli XCX is collaborating with the 1975 on a single titled Spinning by No Rome. And then in 2022, she is working on her album Crash with the help of the drummer in the 1975, George Daniel, who is also a music producer. Now, around the same time in March 2022, we get some photos surfacing of Charli and George walking around, holding hands, and it's a very big deal because prior to this, Charli had been in a very long on-again, off-again relationship with Huck Kwang. Her and Huck were together on and off for 7 years. And so for the first time in a very long time, we're seeing Charli with someone else, and it's exciting, it's interesting, it's tea, it's new. In May 2022, Charli kind of confirms that her and George are dating and goes, as they say, Instagram official. And then that same year in July, George produces Charli's song Hot Girl for the movie Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And so these two start to really build a good relationship together where they're making music, but, also in love, obviously, and having a romantic relationship. And Charli has said in interviews that George was a very big inspiration for her at the time and really helped her, craft her music persona. And as I'm sure we all remember, Charli and George had their very big, very cool girl wedding, very rave, just this year. So they have a very good relationship. But what that means is that since circa 2022, I guess, Charli would have really been hanging around the 1975 band and George and his bandmates, which of course includes Maddie Healy. So now Charli and Maddie are really good friends, and maybe you're kind of starting to see why we had to do this little 1975 detour. But essentially, all we need to know is Taylor and Maddie had weird rumor lore in 2014, and now since 2022, Charli and Maddie have become really close and really good friends through her relationship with George. Okay, back to Taylor. January 2023, Taylor makes a surprise appearance during one of 1975's concerts, and she performs her song Anti-Hero. Now, at the time, Taylor is still with Joe Alwyn, and then we also find out that same year that Maddie had actually been working on songs for Taylor's album Midnights, but that none of the music that he worked on together with Taylor made it to the final cut. And Maddie explains that there was nothing nefarious about that, it just didn't work out. He says it was for reasons that are not to be criticized. She is amazing. So again, very supportive of one another. April 2023 is when Joe and Taylor announced their breakup, and again, this is huge news because they had been together for 6 years at that point. And then the following month, May 2023, Maddie Healy attends the Eras tour, and at this point there are already some dating rumors swirling around. As we know, the groundwork for this has kind of already been laid way back in 2014, but The Sun actually reports that they are dating, and people are skeptical because we've been down this road before, we've made up these rumors before, why would we believe it this time round? After Maddie attends the Eras tour, he and Taylor are photographed going to Taylor's Nashville home in the middle of the night, and then on May 12th, they are seen making out. Now, of course, at this time, Charli is with George, the drummer, and so we can assume that probably for the first time since Reputation tour wrapped up, Charli and Taylor are kind of in the same circles again. They're in close quarters with one another. They're essentially kind of like sister-in-laws, considering how close Maddie and George are, and the whole band is, and they're both going along to 1975 concerts and hanging out backstage and supporting their mans. So these two are hanging out again for the first time since Reputation. Now, important to note that the Swifties are not happy at all with the fact that Taylor is dating Maddie Healy. This actually sparked the whole rat boyfriend trend back in 2023 because people were saying that Maddie looks like that rat from Flushed Away. As I mentioned, he's also very controversial. He definitely does drugs. He's big into that kind of party scene. He says really offensive things. He's edgy. He says dark humor shit because he's better than everyone. Anywho, so the Swifties are upset, to say the least. There's a lot of online vitriol towards Maddie. It's really hard to remember now in 2025 how all-consuming this relationship really was on the internet. But trust me when I say in 2023 you couldn't open your internet browser without seeing some kind of discourse about these two. It really, really took over the chronically online community, as ridiculous as that sounds. We, of course, had the Ice Spice controversy, which is when Maddie was on some podcast talking his controversial, stupid shit. He made a couple of, in his words, jokes, but really they were just really offensive, really racist comments about Ice Spice and her ethnicity and her body, and it was just fucked up, to be honest. All that went down. Of course, Taylor was staying silent. She then invited Ice Spice to do a remix of her song Karma because she's like, I love Ice Spice. I love Ice Spice as an artist. So those two go off and do this whole song together right after Maddie just made all these weird comments about her. And then people were kind of like, damn, did Taylor even want to collaborate with Ice Spice, or is this some kind of damage control to save Maddie? And then Ice Spice went on the record saying she doesn't even give a fuck about what Maddie said. She didn't even know about it and doesn't care. Which it's like, period queen, as you should, because why would the lioness Ice Spice concern herself with the whisperings of a flea? It's so nuts to think back because at the time I remember finding all of this discourse about Maddie and Taylor very valid, and now that I'm looking back at it with hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, we were all batshit crazy. I mean, why was this such intense news for us. Anyway, the Swifties are heated. It gets to the point where they actually write an open letter to Taylor Swift asking her to speak on the controversies surrounding Maddie and kind of hold him accountable because, you know, you are who you date type of shit. So the letter starts, "As concerned fans, we are writing to express our disappointment regarding recent events you've been recently seen with and have welcomed to your stage Maddie Healy. He has been involved in acts and controversies that deeply trouble us." It was a tumultuous time. And look, I don't disagree with that, all right? Like, absolutely, Maddie says some stupid shit. I personally just don't care for the guy. Whatever. I'm kind of in the same camp as Ice Spice, where I'm like, why do we even give a shit what this loser says? Those are my words, not his. It was a very tense time for Taylor. In June 2023, so just 1 month after they first were linked together, Maddie and Taylor break up. So it was a very short-lived romance, and one that she probably couldn't enjoy as much as she wanted to because of all the shit she was getting from her fans. And, you know, we know from her 2019 Women of the Decade speech that she previously has felt a lot of pressure to directly respond to criticism that she is getting.
I would keep accommodating, overcorrecting in an effort to appease my critics. They're saying I'm dating too much in my 20s. Okay, I'll stop. I'll just be single for years. Now they're saying my album Red is filled with too many breakup songs. Okay, I'll make one about moving to New York and deciding that really my life is more fun with just my friends. Oh, they're saying my music is changing too much for me to stay in country music. All right. Okay, here's an entire genre shift and a pop album called 1989. Ah, you heard it? Sick. Now it's that I'm showing you too many pictures of me with my friends. Okay, I can stop doing that too. Now I'm actually a calculated manipulator rather than a smart businesswoman. Okay, I'll disappear from public view for years. Now I'm being cast as a villain to you. Okay, here's an album called Reputation, and there are lots of snakes everywhere.
So, you know, if all of her fans are so upset that she's dating Maddie Healy, it wouldn't surprise me if that literally caused her to break up with him. Now, since then, we've kind of got varying accounts for what happened. I mean, around the time, the reports from gossip magazines were that it was just casual for them both and there were no hard feelings and blah, 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 which, whatever, that is such a PR statement if I've ever seen one. There's been rumors that Maddie Healy ghosted Taylor. There's been rumors that she felt pressured from her fans. Either way, things end. The one thing I guess that we do know about this short-lived romance is that it really left a mark on Taylor. And that is because in April 2024, her album, The Tortured Poets Department, is released. And even though she has just also come out of a 6-year relationship with Joe Alwyn, and everyone's expecting this album to very heavily talk about that relationship and that breakup and, you know, spending 6 years of your life with somebody. But instead, a lot of the tracks on The Tortured Poets Department are seemingly about Maddie Healy. Kind of iconic. I'm kind of here for that because it's like sometimes that 1 month situationship is the thing that fucks you, you know? Like, you think it's going to be your 6-year relationship? No, it's the guy you were seeing for 1 month who everybody hated and whose friends you didn't get along with. And to be honest, like, if I think about what I know about Maddie Healy, I feel like he would be a very intense person to date. Like, I'm sure there were some toxic elements there. I feel like if I listened to the Tortured Poets Department, I could probably find out more about what their relationship dynamic was. But as someone who hasn't listened to any of the music and hasn't really dug into the intricacies of his and Taylor's relationship, from a purely outsider perspective, it gives me the vibes that he would be very good at being super intense. I feel like he could potentially be a little bit love bomby. I feel like He could potentially flip and flop his emotions a little bit. You wouldn't always necessarily know 100% where you stand with him. Again, I'm making all of this up just based on very limited information. But we know it was an intense experience for Taylor because it inspired nearly an entire album. Now, interestingly, both Maddie and Taylor, 3 months after their breakup, announce being in new relationships. So Taylor is, of course, dating Travis Kelce, and Maddie is first seen with Gabriette, and both of these couples are still together now. After the Tortured Poets department drops, Maddie is asked his opinion for the songs that are written about him. The reporter asking him is like, what do you think about the diss tracks Taylor wrote about you? Again, I haven't actually heard the songs, but knowing what I know about Taylor, I feel like, were they really diss tracks or were they just songs about their relationship? Because just because you write about an experience you had with another person, that doesn't automatically make it a diss track. Anyway, Maddie is very nonchalant about it. He's like, oh, I haven't listened. I don't even know what you're talking about, but I'm sure it's good music. Maddie's aunt also drops a quote saying that Maddie doesn't really care about Taylor writing music about him, and that he's very happy in his new relationship with Gabriette and that he's focusing on that. And, you know, I will say there are also 1975 songs that are rumored to be about Taylor. So, you know, I feel like they both just drew on that short stint of a relationship and used it to inspire new music, which is what you're meant to do as an artist. So again, I don't know why people always get so intense or titchy when artists write about one another. Back to Charli and Taylor. It's 2024, it's Brat summer. Charli releases her hit album Brat in June, and actually before the album is officially released in May, she had put a PSA on her TikTok saying that there were no diss tracks on the album. She says, quote, "It's so complicated being a female artist where you are pitted against your peers, but also expected to be best friends with every single person constantly. If you're not, you're deemed a bad feminist." And this is something we do know Charli struggles with, is, you know, this kind of comparison or competition between herself and other artists. You know, she's been very candid about feeling this sort of jealousy towards Lorde because they were constantly getting mixed up for one another, and Lorde, I guess, had much bigger success in 2014 than Charli would have, and so she constantly felt in competition there. She's even admitted that sometimes when she sees George performing with the 1975, she feels that pang of jealousy because, you know, she used to watch their concerts and think, oh god, I could never sell out a big arena like this myself. So she is someone who gets in her head a lot and struggles with that kind of competitive dynamic in the industry. And as she mentioned, you know, there is this sort of pressure where you're pitted against one another, but at the same time you better be 1000% supportive of all of your peers, because otherwise you're not a girl's girl and you're a bad feminist, and, you know, women need to uplift one another, but also let's break down and compare the two of them to the tiniest little detail, you know. So I kind of get where she's coming from, and I think this is a vulnerability that she's been fairly open about, which is why, little side note, I always find it interesting when people are like, oh, Charli's the ultimate unbothered queen, she's the unbothered cool girl, you know, brat, whatever. Charli to me is definitely not unbothered, and I don't think she's ever pretended to be either. I think she's, you know, I find her very cool. I don't think she's that unbothered cool girl that people like to make her out to be. I just found that interesting because it's like, if you listen to her music or the interviews she gives, she's always pretty candid about feeling insecure, feeling like she's not good enough, comparing herself to those around her. Brat is released in June, and along with it comes the song Sympathy is a Knife, which is all about someone who brings out her insecurities. It's giving me flashbacks to Olivia Rodrigo's song The Grudge. I hear your voice every time I think I'm not enough. And this song really strongly hints at being about Taylor Swift, specifically about that time when Taylor and Charli were both dating the guys in the 1975 and were, you know, obviously present together when the 1975 were touring and were sort of in the same friend circle. The song begins, "I don't want to share the space. I don't want to force a smile. This one girl taps my insecurities. Don't know if it's real or if I'm spiraling. One voice tells me that they laugh. George says, I'm just paranoid. Says he just don't see it. He is so naive. I'm embarrassed to have it, but need the sympathy. First of all, relate. We have all been in that situation where you are with another girl and you're just getting this negative energy, and she's not necessarily saying anything that's directly mean or directly bad. She might even be saying nice things like complimenting you, but you just feel this underlying negative, mean energy. And then you'll try to bring it up with your boyfriend and they'll be like, what? No, she's nice. What do you mean? She's always saying these lovely things to you. And it's like, yeah, but the tone, the eyes, the voice, the inflection, like, anywho. Clearly already off that first verse, it's pretty easy to tell that this is likely about Taylor. I don't want to share the space, I don't want to share my friends, my boyfriend with you. And, it's clearly somebody that has also been around George. And I think, again, it is relatable, like when you have that really close friend group and you all get along very well together, and then one person starts dating someone that's maybe not a bad person, but just a different person or just a different speed or vibe to the rest of the group, and it throws things off a little bit and maybe the dynamic changes a bit. And I think that again is something that is quite relatable, that everybody has experienced at some point. And not necessarily saying this is Taylor's fault or something that she did wrong. I think it's just one of those human experiences. You're not going to get along with everyone. Some people just aren't people that are your vibe. Yeah, it's normal. Charli continues, because I couldn't even be her if I tried. I'm opposite, I'm on the other side. I feel all these feelings I can't control. Oh no, don't know why. All this sympathy is just a knife. Why I can't even grit my teeth and lie. I feel all these feelings I can't control. Oh no, don't know why. And again, I think her and Taylor definitely are opposites, they're on the opposite side in terms of aesthetic, personality even, music, to be honest. Like, I know they're both considered pop, but to me their sound is completely different. So I think it makes sense that this is about Taylor. And sort of that feeling of, what it's like for Charli, who compares herself to everyone, suddenly being very close to this ultra successful Eras Tour Taylor powerhouse who is smashing records left, right, and center. It would be tricky. That would be a difficult person to be around if you're someone like Charli who's very like harsh on themselves almost in a way and is constantly comparing themselves. Now, verse 2, things get a little bit darker, but I think it is an exaggeration, I hope. And we also get the line that really heavily points to this being about Taylor. She sings, I want to buy a gun, I want to shoot myself, volatile at war with my dialogue, I'd say that there was a God if they could stop this. Wild voice tearing me apart, I'm so apprehensive now, don't want to see her backstage at my boyfriend's show, fingers crossed behind my back, I hope they break up quick. This is definitely the most shady line. It's also the line that's most clearly points to Taylor, because who else is going to be backstage at George's show and who else is she hoping is going to break up quick? That line is for sure shady. I mean, I would be devastated if I found out that one of my boyfriend's friends was secretly hoping we break up or didn't want to have me around. Like, that is definitely mean. I'm not going to try to defend that. At the same time, I would be lying like a rug if I sat here saying that I have never felt the same way. I mean, we've all surely felt that. You can't tell me that you meet every single one of your friends' partners and are like, oh, yes, perfect. I'm so excited to be friends with you, right? Like, every now and then a certain person comes along and you go, God, I kind of hope they don't make it, because I don't like this person. And I think that's okay also. Like, it is mean, but I think it's okay. What do you guys think? You guys vibe check this for me. Maybe I'm just exposing myself as a big bitch. That's Sympathy as a Knife. Definitely some shady elements in there. As a whole, I don't think it's actually that mean. It's not really that much targeted towards Taylor. It's more so focused on Charli's insecurities, you know, her kind of recognizing that these thoughts are silly or wishing she wasn't feeling this type of way. So it's a very vulnerable track about a very human experience. And the feeling I really get from this is, you know, Charli is obviously close to the band. She gets on well with them. She's friends with Maddie, maybe even a little bit protective of him. This girl comes in, someone she is clearly not that friendly with, like isn't close to on a personable level, because as I mentioned, after Reputation tour, these two weren't in the same circles ever. You know, they get along fine, but they're not dying to hang out with one another. And it's hard when you have this good energy in your friend group to welcome somebody in who you've kind of already previously decided you wouldn't be close friends with. And I'm absolutely positive that Charli, you know, there would have been some snark going on. I'm sure she made little comments about Taylor to George, maybe even to Maddie. You know, I kind of feel like you can just guess that there would have been some shady remarks being made. And again, like, not saying that that's right and definitely not something to be proud of, but like I do kind of feel like potentially that would have happened. Like, I'm not going to be shocked if we find out, oh, Charli said some shit to George and Maddie about Taylor. Now, also around this time as Sympathy is a Knife was released in June, Maddie also proposes to Gabriette, who he started seeing after his breakup with Taylor. And I guess it's also worth mentioning that Gabriette and Charli are very good friends. They met in 2018. I think Gabriette was in a music video of Charli's. And then in 2019, they reconnected again because Charli actually helps Gabriette form the band Nasty Cherry, which is like this female alt pop band. And Gabriette is brought on as the lead singer. And the whole process of Charli putting together this band, bringing these women together, is documented in a Netflix documentary titled I'm With the Band. And so ever since that whole experience, Charli and Gabriette have remained close friends, which I think adds more to that sort of tension. When Taylor was dating Maddie, she's like crossing her fingers hoping they break up, and yet like Maddie's new gal Gabriette, Charli just like absolutely approves of and is, you know, very obsessed with and loves hanging out with. And after Maddie and Gabriette's engagement is announced online, Denise Welch, which is Maddie's mum, gives a quote saying, "I woke up this morning to the fact that they had put it on Instagram. Instagram official. He's got engaged to Gabriella Bechdel. Gabriette, she's known as. I couldn't be more thrilled. She's from Los Angeles. She's absolutely gorgeous. She is everything that I would want in a daughter-in-law, and I'm so thrilled." The whole world was upset when Taylor was dating Maddie, but here we have his mom just being like so open towards Gabriette. And I think it's kind of made worse because in July this year, Denise was on Watch What Happens Live and is asked about the Tortured Poets department. And she says that being Taylor's mother-in-law is a role that she is glad that she lost. Shady. And she continues, "Not that I have anything against her at all. It was tricky. Listen, you're not allowed to say anything," and then she writes a whole album about it. But Maddie is taking it all in completely good grace. He's very happy with his amazing fiancée Gabriette, who is gorgeous. And so we've moved on. So I think that does kind of add a bit of insult to injury. Like, even his mum is more happy that he's dating Gabriette. And this is where we also start to see Taylor potentially being a little bit shady as all of this is going down. Because when Brat is released, it has an amazing release week. It starts to climb the charts, particularly in the UK, which is where Charli is from. And it's starting to climb up the UK albums chart and looking like it might take the #1 spot. When all of a sudden, Taylor decides to release a UK-only edition of the Tortured Poets department. This, of course, takes that #1 spot and kind of blocks Brat from coming in #1. Now, I will say a little mini defense for Taylor is that at this time, in June as well, the Eras Tour had just started its UK leg. I guess you could argue it kind of makes sense for her to release this UK-only edition of TTPD because she's about to start her Eras Tour leg. However, we do also know that these kind of timely releases to block the success of people who she's maybe beefing with is a pattern, right? Okay, we saw something similar happen with Katy Perry. There's been rumors of similar things happening with Billie Eilish. It is something that she seems to keep in her arsenal. Also, at the time, there were like over 30 different variants of the Tortured Poets department. And like, did we really need another one, you know? And to be honest, I do think that this whole variants and re-releases and shit like that, it does kind of fuck with the charts a little bit, because an album should just come out once. You shouldn't be able to release your album like 30 or 40 times in the span of a month. Just my opinion. Now, of course, Charli's fans were really pissed at her doing this because it's fucking annoying. And Charli is performing in Sao Paulo when the crowd actually starts chanting, "Taylor is dead." Now, that again, super extreme, obviously like not okay to be doing that sort of shit. And Charli does call out this behavior on her Instagram story, saying, "Can the people who do this please stop online or at my shows? It is the opposite of what I want, and it disturbs me that anyone would think there is room for this in this community. I will not tolerate it." And I do also appreciate that Charli really like nipped that behavior in the butt as soon as possible, because that is something else that I've kind of criticized Taylor for, is that sometimes she will write music about people and the people will, you know, be receiving death threats from the Swifties, and she is always just so silent. She's so silent about it. It is something that I think is irresponsible for her to do. So I definitely do appreciate that Charli spoke up. In August 2024, New York Magazine is doing a cover story of Charli, and she also comments on Maddie's relationship with Gabriette, saying she'd always quietly hoped that they would be together. Again, could be a bit shady towards Taylor. She is also asked about Sympathy as a Knife, and she says, quote, "People are going to think what they want to think. That song is about me and my feelings and my anxiety and the way my brain creates narratives and stories in my head when I feel insecure, and how I don't want to be in those situations physically when I feel self-doubt." Which I think makes sense, and I think that is also exactly the narrative that she portrays in Sympathy as a Knife. Now, the interviewer, I feel like this is a little bit shady. They do reach out to Taylor Swift for, you know, a comment on Charli. I feel like they were trying to dig out some kind of beef between them, but Taylor gives a very good quote saying, "I've been blown away by Charli's melodic sensibilities since I first heard Stay Away in 2011. Her writing is surreal and inventive always. She just takes a song to places you wouldn't expect her to go, and she's been doing it consistently for over a decade. I love to see hard work like that pay off." Again, it's a very nice, positive quote. I think from a PR perspective as well, it is a very good move for Taylor to make. As we know, Brat's summer was huge. I mean, people were, you know, obsessed with it, and if Taylor had given a kind of shady quote or refused to comment on it or anything like that, it would have been very negatively received. So the fact that she, you know, took the high road here, it really does show me as well, though, how good Taylor is at playing the game, right? And this is why she is such a seasoned pop star and why she is as famous as she is, because that tension that Charli was struggling with, where you're in competition with one another, but you're expected to also be best friends, that is something that Taylor can masterfully navigate. She absolutely is able to hold people close, hold her competition close, be friendly, always give the most supportive, loving quotes about any kind of up-and-coming artist, even Olivia Rodrigo in the early days, and, you know, be that very like American sweetheart type of woman. Now, some people also think that the photo shoot for this cover story was Charli shading Taylor, because some of the images do feature this massive severed hand, and the severed hand is wearing friendship bracelets, which are of course very closely linked to Taylor's Eras tour. We skip forward to Feb 2025, and Taylor is seen dancing along to Charli's performance of Von Dutch at the Grammys. Interestingly, Taylor did something very similar in 2024 when she sang along to Olivia Rodrigo performing Vampire, and this is after all the writing credit dramas, and people were kind of like, wow, that's interesting that Taylor is, you know, standing up. The Grammys are a seated event, so anytime someone in the crowd is standing up to dance along, like, it's kind of insinuating that they really, really enjoy the music. So, you know, people were kind of interested in the fact that Taylor was standing up to dance for Olivia Rodrigo's performance, and then here again is standing up to dance for Charli's performance, two people who she, you know, at both times was allegedly feuding with. It's interesting because it's perceived in many different ways. So some people who see this are like, well, that just goes to show that the feuds aren't real. Taylor's always such a supportive woman. Of course, she's going to get up and dance for people, you know, in her industry. Other people are kind of like, oh, is this calculated? Because often her feuds with people are alleged. They are based on rumors. So if she can just get up and dance, then that's a good way to kind of shush everybody up, because clearly these people are on great terms. Otherwise, why is she up here popping her pussy to Von Dutch? And then other people have a bit more of like a nefarious theory that Taylor does this on purpose to kind of draw the attention away from the person performing, which I don't know. As fun as that theory is, like her just standing up for her enemies so that the camera like swings off Olivia and onto her, it's a very enticing theory. I'm not necessarily sure how much I believe it. Maybe she just loves a good boogie. Maybe she just can't help herself. The music takes over and she doesn't care who's performing. It's a good song. Other people are like, she's literally on coke. Like, of course she's dancing. All good theories. Let me know which one. Let me know which one you believe in. Then we get to October 3rd, 2025, International Mean Girls Day. And of course, Taylor releases her album, The Life of a Showgirl. And we get the song Actually Romantic, which is rumored to be about Charli XCX. And even when Taylor just teased the track list for The Life of a Showgirl, people were already like, oh, I think that song's going to be about Charli. And that's because Charli has a song called Everything is Romantic. This song is called Actually Romantic. And interestingly, Everything is Romantic is track 7 on Brat, and Actually Romantic is track 7 on The Life of a Showgirl. And we know Taylor likes to, you know, work with numerology. And okay, actually, let's pivot a little bit, because The Life of a Showgirl also has the song Father Figure, which some people think could be about Olivia Rodrigo. And a huge thank you to the wonderful person who commented on part 1 on YouTube and kind of was like, yeah, like look at the lyrics to Father Figure. This could be about Olivia Rodrigo. And I absolutely agree, because we get lyrics like, said they want to see you rise, but they don't want you to reign. I showed you all the tricks of the trade. All I asked for is your loyalty, my dear protege. In the chorus, we have this love is pure profit. Just step into my office. So very much this kind of painting of a mastermind, or of a person at the top who can manipulate the people around them, the upcoming proteges, you know, give them just enough success to get them on the up, but not quite enough to take their spot. So I thought that song was interesting. And I do think that we see Taylor sometimes being quite calculated in how she aligns herself, particularly with other pop artists. She's very good at playing the game. I guess the other interesting thing about The Life of a Showgirl is that a lot of the tracks on that album heavily reference existing music, or are heavily inspired by existing music, including Actually Romantic, which people have pointed out has a similar chord progression to Where Is My Mind by the Pixies. And it just feels like an extra level of slap in the face for Olivia Rodrigo, who, you know, had all this hullabaloo over a bridge that didn't even really sound that similar to Cruel Summer, to be honest. And yet here Taylor is like, so many of the songs that I've heard from The Life of a Showgirl, they start and I'm like, wait, why do I feel like I already know this song? And it's literally because it's just been so heavily inspired by existing music, which again, I'm not against that. I think it's awesome when artists are inspired by one another, but it's like you took 50% of Deja Vu royalties and now you're out here like doing the same shit. Anyway, back to Actually Romantic. This song is all about someone who spends a lot of time talking shit, chatting about you, to the point where it's like, oh, are you a fan? Like, are you actually just a fan? There's definitely a kind of like common emotional pipeline here where, you know, you don't like someone and then you keep talking about how much you don't like them. And then you kind of start to spiral a bit and you get a bit obsessed with talking about how much you don't like them. And then suddenly it gets a little bit blurry because it's like, why is this person occupying all my thoughts all the time if I don't like them? And it gets a little bit to that point of like, do I actually like them? And, you know, we see actually a similar tension in Mean Girls, where Katy becomes so obsessed with taking down Regina George to the point where she like accidentally starts emulating her and becoming her. It's interesting. The tensions between obsession and love and hate and blah blah, I always find that very, very fascinating. Actually Romantic starts, I heard you call me boring Barbie when the cokes got you brave. First of all, I love this line. Charli is very open about being into coke and, you know, party drugs. I mean, she literally came up in the rave scene. I feel like that is no surprise. Taylor continues, high-fived my ex and then said you're glad he ghosted me, wrote me a song saying it makes you sick to see my face. Some people might be offended, but it's actually sweet. All the time you've spent on me, it's honestly wild. All the effort you've put in, it's actually romantic. I really gotta hand it to you. No man has ever loved me like you do. So the whole song, Taylor is basically saying like she doesn't care that Charli's talking all this shit. She doesn't care that Charli can't keep her name out her mouth because it's actually quite sweet. Like, it's actually romantic how much time you spend thinking about me and talking about me and how much energy you put into, you know, thinking about me as well. So as a concept, I'm actually kind of here for it because I find that dynamic very interesting. And I'm also here for it because I feel like it's a bit of a different angle that we see Taylor take than she normally does when it comes to these sort of feuds, right? Like if we compare this approach to Bad Blood, where she assembled the sister squad and was like, baby, now we got bad blood, you know, take a look what you've done, to here being like, oh, thank you. Actually, like, oh, you're saying all that? Oh, thank you. I'm so flattered. And having like a bit more fun with it and kind of joking around a little bit. That's something that I at least haven't really seen from Taylor before. And I think it shows that she's definitely in a different place completely to where she was when she wrote Bad Blood, for example, right? Because the Bad Blood Taylor who got butthurt over some dancers absolutely wouldn't have been able to be in a position to laugh about a situation like that. Now, as to how genuine her kind of jokey nature actually is, you know, I mean, that's up for debate. She could be kind of putting on this like, haha, I don't really care facade to kind of mask how much she does actually care about it. She continues, like a toy chihuahua barking at me from a tiny purse, that's how much it hurts. How many times has your boyfriend said, why are we always talking about her? We get to the bridge, which is where it gets a little bit sexual, honestly. I don't know. I wasn't expecting this. But it says, you think I'm tacky, baby. Stop talking dirty to me. It sounded nasty, but it feels like you're flirting with me. I mind my business. God's my witness that I don't provoke it. It's kind of making me wet. Anywho, I mind my business. God's my witness. That's cap. Taylor, I don't know the last time you minded your business about anything. She definitely will always insert herself into things. So I find that line funny. Yeah, this was kind of the song that she wrote, allegedly, about Charli. Now, when I tell you, the response to this song was not great at all. Many people felt like it was really unwarranted given that Sympathy is a Knife is all about Charli being really vulnerable and feeling so insecure, grappling with these really complex feelings, and then to kind of come back to that with this whole song all about like, oh my god, you're like literally in love with me, is kind of crazy, and like Taylor completely missed the whole point of Sympathy is a Knife. And I would agree if Sympathy is a Knife is truly the only thing that Charli ever did. If we are to assume that that is the only like shot that Charli took at Taylor, then yeah, I would say Actually Romantic is a huge fucking overreaction and Are You Okay, Taylor? Like somebody do a welfare check. I just don't think that's the case. I don't know, and I'm inserting my own experiences here for sure, but if I really like take a step back and think about Sympathy is a Knife and what Charli was saying in that and how she didn't want to share her friend group with Taylor and she was crossing her fingers hoping that her and Maddie were going to break up. And then we're also meant to just believe that while she's feeling all these big feelings, she's also just saying nothing bad or snarky about Taylor ever. Like, no. If you feel that way about someone, you're going to be talking shit. You're going to be behind their back, maybe even to Maddie. Like, I just don't believe that she would have been silent during that time. I truly think she would have been saying some shady, snarky stuff. And so because of this, because I've kind of made up / inferred that Charli was highly likely to be saying stuff about Taylor, I kind of think Actually Romantic is okay. I think it's a valid response. I think it's okay. It's not the best song. It's not the catchiest. I'm not going to be listening to it, but I think the sentiment expressed in it is fine. And I do think that's the case. And you know, Gabriette's been a little bit messy online too, liking little snarky posts about Taylor, commenting on stuff. You know, she's been a little bit messy too. So don't for one, like, you can't convince me for 1 second that these two haven't had like a little gossip debrief about Taylor and potentially said some like bitchy things about her to George and Maddie. Like, you cannot convince me. And of course, some of that probably made it back to Taylor because the industry is small. Everyone knows everyone in Hollywood, and this type of news travels. So I'm actually kind of not mad about actually romantic. Hot take. But that is the feud between Taylor and Charli XCX, which means it's time to kind of wrap up and decide whether we think Taylor Swift is a mean girl. So let's recap. We had the feud with Katy Perry. She's just transitioned to pop music. She's very sensitive about everything. She's kind of in this mindset of everybody out to get her. And in my mind, she completely overreacts to a little miscommunication with some backup dancers. But I don't necessarily think that it was mean girl. I think it was just someone who was a little bit too easily provoked. We then get to Olivia Rodrigo. Taylor is turning 30. She's feeling the pressure of losing her spot as #1 pop star. We've got this very talented young vocalist up and coming. Sour was such a big hit. And, you know, she goes after Olivia Rodrigo's writing credits. Since then, Olivia has never said another word about Taylor, even though she used to be the biggest Swiftie. Is this feud mean girl behavior? Yes, absolutely, 1000% mean girl. I think this is the most heartbreaking feud in a way that we have ever covered because it's just so sad. It's so upsetting to think about Olivia like being so disappointed by her idol. And now we get to the feud with Charli XCX. It's definitely petty. I'm sure there's some bitter feelings from Taylor for how Gabriette is being, you know, received by Maddie's inner circle. Charli loves Gabriette. His mom loves Gabriette. Oh, everyone fucking Maddie loves Gabriette. And yet, where was this energy for her? You know, like, I'm sure that there are some of those little feelings. I know she's happily engaged to Travis now, but there might be some petty jealousy, even a little bit of like, wow, like, why was I not good enough for you guys, but this girl is, type of vibe. And, you know, we get a bit of a more jokey response. Who knows if it's genuine? Maybe it's her masking some deeper feelings, but, you know, she's really at the top of her game. She's post Eras tour. She is releasing this doco. She is in a huge position of power. I mean, like, Gabriette who? Like, I'm sorry. I know people are very, like, supportive of Gabriette in general, but she's not even like on the same chessboard as Taylor Swift. Do you know what I mean? Taylor's playing chess, Gabriette is playing Snap. And yes, Charli had a huge year with, you know, Brat and has since been doing lots of cool projects, but still not that same level of like height and fame and success as Taylor. So I think she is in a bit of this position where she can kind of throw her weight around a bit and can kind of afford to be a bit like, ha ha ha, look at you guys, you're all so obsessed with me. Meanwhile, I'm just here living my best life. Do I think this is a mean girl feud? I actually think yes, but not because of actually romantic. I think more just because of the strategic releasing to allegedly block people from being successful in the charts. I think she is in a position now where she can quite easily be a mean girl. She really is in that like queen bee top spot. And so I do also think that part of her being a mean girl is just part of her environment and her trajectory and where she's at in life and the power that she kind of holds and her huge fandom. It would be hard not to be a mean girl if anyone was in that position. But let me know if you agree or disagree. I think if I had one note for Taylor, it would be to be careful with how far she takes her mean girl behavior. And that is just because, you know, we saw a very similar dynamic type of thing with Nicki Minaj, where when she was in her early career, she was very like abrasive and, you know, would stick up for herself and be a really strong advocate for herself, which were all great things and all things that she had to do to become successful. And then yet once she'd made it to the top, when she continued this very abrasive shtick, it kind of didn't serve her as well anymore. It kind of put people off her a little bit. So I think we're seeing a similar trajectory with Taylor. You know, there's been moments where she's had to be a mean girl to kind of protect her spot, to build her empire, to be the number one pop star in the world. You kind of have to be ruthless at times. You have to be mean. But now that she's there and she's been here for a hot minute and she's not going anywhere anytime soon, if I were her, I would just tone it down a bit. Take Nikki as your warning. But that is all I have for this week's episode. Remember, it is the last one for 2025. Don't forget to rate the podcast if you enjoy the show. And please do leave a written review or comment. I love my words of affirmation. And you can connect with me on socials at Mood for Feud. I hope everyone is crushing their goals this week. And of course, keeping out of trouble. Don't get into any feuds. And I will talk to you all next week. Bye.